So you all just learned about what matter is. We talked about how chemistry is the study of matter. In chemistry class, we're going to constantly describe matter. So we need to learn how to describe matter appropriately. We're going to be using the following two vocabulary words: physical and chemical. And what I want you to do is pause the video and on your notability, define what you think the words physical and chemical mean. Once you define them in your own words, press play and continue watching. We can classify matter based on its physical and its chemical properties. What's the difference? Physical properties can be observed using the five senses, and most importantly, they can be observed without changing the chemical composition of the matter. For example, on the screen, you see this little children's block. Just by looking at it, I can say it's 4 centimeters tall. I can observe that without changing what the block is. I can also say the block has blue, red, and tan colors. I can observe it without changing anything about it, right? Those are all physical properties. Chemical properties, on the other hand, indicate how a substance reacts with something else. And the only way to identify a chemical property is by changing the chemical composition of that substance. So, an example of this would be if I took the block and I tested its flammability. Remember, flammability is whether or not a substance can light on fire. So if I test that block's flammability and I determine, yes, this little children's block is flammable, I have changed the chemical composition of the substance. No longer do I have this block. Now I have a pile of ashes, likely, right? So chemical properties can be identified by changing the chemical composition of a substance. In a moment, what you're going to be doing is identifying whether properties of matter are chemical or physical properties. The way I like to do it is just by looking at this easy diagram. Ask myself a question: can I observe this property without changing what the substance is or what the object is? If the answer is yes, it's a physical property. If the answer is no, it's a chemical property. So, on your own, once again, you're going to see this table on your notes. Go ahead and pause the video. Go through and label whether or not you think the following properties are physical or chemical. After you make your guesses, play the video to check your answers. Okay, that first one. Color is a physical property. Why? Because I can observe it without changing the substance. Mass, also physical. I can observe it without changing the substance. Flammability, however, as we already mentioned, is a chemical property. Make sure as we go through that you're filling in that Y column if you haven't already. Boiling point. This one's a tricky one. A lot of people will say this is chemical, or a lot of students might think this is chemical, but it's actually a physical property. And this is key to remember. So boiling point is the point at which a liquid turns into a gas, right? So even though water might be turning into water vapor, it's still the same chemical formula, H2O. And as you know, the only difference is that those H2O molecules are just spread farther apart. But it's still the same thing. It's still the same substance, which is why we still say it's a physical property. We can observe it without changing what it is. In the very same way, the state of matter of a substance, that's a physical property. Whether or not the substance reacts with acid, obviously our keyword there is reacts, means it's going to be a chemical property. Make sure to fill in that Y column as you go through, or as you finish up. To finish up this section of your notes, you're going to look at these 8 statements and write whether or not it's a physical or chemical property next to it. Once you get all your guesses in, raise your hand and ask Mr. Filsick to come over so you can check your work and make sure you're on the right track. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed learning about ways we will continue to describe matter using physical and chemical properties.